Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for your testimony. You know, I've been doing foreign policy between the House and the Senate for 26 years, and I've learned one thing, that if you're attacked and you don't respond, an aggressor will attack again. Does anybody disagree with that proposition? So we've been attacked by Russia, and we haven't significantly responded to that attack. And we see the consequences of the international community not really responding. We see it. Putin made a calculated decision, Crimea, Eastern Ukraine. He made a calculated decision in Syria. It's all paying off for him at this point. So he's going to continue to make calculated decisions based upon whether we, the United States, the leader of the free world, and get others to join us in responding. So I'm a big supporter of my colleagues' efforts on the Deter Act, but that's prospective. It doesn't deal with all of the other malign, nefarious activities that Putin and Russia's engaged in violating the international order that we helped create after World War II and has brought peace and stability for the better part of 3/4 of a century. So the question is, and I heard in my office my distinguished colleague and friend, the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, of which I'm the ranking Democrat, I know he has a certain degree of reticence towards sanctions. We've had some conversations about that. But it is the only tool of peaceful diplomacy that we have outside of aid and trade and international opinion that we can use. So my point is at this point, we have been attacked through those cyber attacks. There's no question about it. We are in the midst of that even as we speak. We have seen the violation of the international order that inures to our own detriment in terms of our own national interest and security. Certainly, I would argue that in Syria, at least. And so we need to respond. And there's a reticence, I guess, about responding. Now, I'm all for understanding how do we refine our response. But responding in and of itself, we've already taken too long, from my perspective, to respond. So I look at this, and I appreciate, Ambassador Fried, some of the comments you made about DASCA, which I have joined with Senator Graham and others in pursuing. You mentioned good ideas from that legislation, targeting corrupt officials and their family members, restricting U.S. persons from dealing in new Russian sovereign debt, allowing the U.S. to designate persons operating in the cyber sector generally, and identifying beneficial owners in high-end real estate deals as some of the elements that I agree. And on the energy questions, you know, we can refine some of those things. But I think what we need to do is to act. So let me ask you, Ambassador Fried, I understand that you led the State Department's Sanctions Coordination Office in the last administration before it was disbanded in 2017 under the Trump administration. What's the value of such an office at State, and what are we missing now that it doesn't exist?
Well, I don't want it to be self-serving, but the office principally extends the power of sanctions by bringing together the Europeans, the Japanese, and the other major democracies in common cause. That's what I did. I was in the best possible negotiating position because when I traveled to Europe, I could do handshake deals at the table and deliver because I had the backing of the interagency, worked very closely with Treasury and all the parts of the State Department. And so we could work with the Europeans and actually come to develop a common language on parallel sanctions. That's helpful. I would bet dollars to rubles that Putin told his people that we would never be able to bring the Europeans along in common cause on sanctions. He was wrong, and he was shown to be wrong, which gets to Mike McFaul's point about not all the Russians comfortable with where Putin is taking him. That office was disbanded. The people doing sanctions at the State Department are capable individuals. They're good people. But they don't have the bureaucratic clout to be able to bring together the interagency and work with the Europeans, the Japanese, the Canadians, the Australians to develop common positions on sanctions, whether it's Russia sanctions or DPRK sanctions.
Thank you. And my time is up, but Ambassador, I'm going to submit for the question, for the record, questions as it relates to Interpol. I believe that the Russians are abusing access to Interpol to suppress efforts, and I'd love to hear your answer on that.
Happy to do it. Thank you.